Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, I think now we are recording. This is our first ever slideshow.
It's happening? It's happening now?
Yes, I did, but we've already, let's tell them, we might as well tell everybody the truth. We tried it once, and I didn't understand what was going on, so therefore, all we got is audio, which I'm going to release because it's pretty good audio. It's just, it's us talking about slides that people can't see.
Well, and that happens a lot. You know, it's like what Star Trek has that pilot that they end up going back and getting what William Shatner's not in the pilot. It's, I can't think of the guy's name.
Yeah.
That's Commander Pike. So, yeah, I mean, again, there's precedence for it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a slideshow. Tony has picked out some slides. We're going to look at them. I'm going to make my screen full size here. This actually, if this works, Tony, it's going to be pretty slick.
It's fun stuff. And these are, as I said in the pilot, which may be on a DVD release later, you'll get to see the unaired pilot. But these are just things I've collected over the years from the internet where you see something cool, or it's something that maybe for a project or an article that I was like, oh, save that because I might want to look at that later. So these are from all over the place, and everybody knows a lot of those popular spots. If you're looking, I highly recommend, I think it's railpictures.net, and rail pictures is together as one word. But, you know, you see on forums everywhere, like Train Orders and other places, guys are always posting cool pictures. So there's stuff all over on the internet, which is one of those just amazing things that we have now. And, you know, it's fun to go through them. So these are just, I went through and I hand selected a few things from various subjects, so we'll just kind of step through a handful of topics tonight and see what strikes us.
Your new internet is just blowing me away. We got to do product news and all sorts of stuff because your sound now is even though I know you're just sitting across the desk from me, they must have installed a new mic on your side.
I think so. Yeah, the folks at Busted Knuckle upgraded my desk recently. Yeah.
So I started the stopwatch on my phone, so that we know how when we get to, we'll try to stop around before 20 minutes.
Okay.
That way, when I haven't done it right again, we won't wait. All right. So what is this? It's Amtrak.
This is early Amtrak, as in the very first Amtrak locomotive. That, you know, Amtrak happened really fast in the grand scheme of things. When you think of so many things that get, you know, talked to death of, well, here's the idea, but it took them years and years to agree on it. You know, a lot of mergers and other things that never happened, that it seems like it's a decade in the making. But Amtrak truly, by like late 69 is when it really catches that we're going to do something. And by late 70, and by May of 71, it's in business. So there was no, to my knowledge, a real official scheme. And they took this as a Penn Central E unit that they did this wraparound of the early pointless arrow. And this was rolled out for the press on May 1st of 71. And this is the E unit later in, you can see it's got help from 4 other Penn Central E units in some train going somewhere. And I think, is that over at the right? Is that a Ford Falcon? What is that car parked there?
That is a Ford. Is it a Ford or the Valiant? It very much could be the Valiant. I don't know. It kind of looks like a Dodge to me.
Yeah, I couldn't decide on that. I'm going to have to look that one up. And this was more typical of the things you saw in those early days. I always find this, they call this the rainbow era of Amtrak, is such a neat time. You know, because was it going to make it, and all this old heritage equipment? This, of course, is a Seaboard Coastline E unit that's kind of been patched up with Amtrak markings on it.
I was talking about this, and we got to do a TV podcast like this too. If we can figure out how to make this easy, we can pump these out pretty good. When you think about it, and it also relates to TV, like the end of you know, Leave It to Beaver and everybody sleeping in separate beds, to Archie Bunker. and all that stuff is a pretty short period of time, and that's the same thing in railroading. From the glory days of passenger trains in the mid 50s to when Amtrak started is actually a fairly short span of time.
It really is, yeah. I mean,
Like
when you have that post-war, because most of them didn't get equipment till almost about 1950, and then by 60 they're already in the hey, let's get rid of these trains, and then by 70 it's Amtrak. So yeah, that like incredible era of like the super chiefs and the high level El Caps and all that, it's a pretty short run, really, couple decades at most.
Yeah, when you think like the big stars like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and all those people, the way they crisscrossed the country, North America was in trains,
Oh, always trains, yeah, yeah. I
and
mean
then
that,
and then they were gone.
here's a
That's
UP unit also kind of patched up, and it's got the
yeah,
neat icicle breakers on the hood there behind the cab, and then at the back by the steam generator, those like metal frame bars, and then behind it that, and it's amazing that Burlington Northern E unit would look so bad because it's March of 1970 is BN, and I don't think from the look of this train this can't be that far into the 70s, so that BNE unit would have had to have been repainted no more than a few years before this picture. Yet it looks worse than the UP,
yeah,
which who knows when it could go back to, like, UP got the last of the E9s in 1961 or two. But yeah, that BN I think is exceptional. That it looks so rugged after what can't be more than a few years, and
and
that's Chicago area.
oh, is that Chicago? I was going to ask you that. And look how dirty this train is too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just filthy. I mean, that was another thing in the 70s. Making them shiny and beautiful wasn't really a priority.
No, not at all. Not at all. Here's another one up in this is Wyoming, and this would be the San Francisco Zephyr, which was a predecessor to Amtrak's California Zephyr. So this would be up on the UP on the Overland route with a UP unit, still pretty much dressed, but you can see in the back it's got the silver plate for its new Amtrak number with a couple of Amtrak painted B units, and then kind of a rainbow consist there with Northern Pacific BN, another Northern Pacific, a Milwaukee or UP diner towards the back, and some other streamline cars. Again, I think these are such neat trains
Oh
with
yeah,
just the mix of equipment.
people would go nuts for this stuff nowadays if they saw one actually
Oh
go.
my gosh, can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we'll drop away from Amtrak with this is the eastbound California Zephyr pulling into Glenwood Springs, Colorado, out in the western part of the state. Which isn't that so pretty? I love the red
yeah.
in the rock and everything. Yeah,
You didn't take me to Glenwood Springs.
we did.
How far were we from Glenwood Springs?
Like when we were at Winter Park Fraser, this would have been a good couple 2 or 3 hours
Okay,
on over to the western part of the state. And I think this is as far east as our buddy Adam Pinellas goes. Or is it Grand Junction? I can't remember if
Grand
it's.
Junction, Colorado.
Oh, okay. So that would be a little further west than this. But this is a great spot. I was out here last in, I think, 2014 and spent a few days right here where this picture's taken on this little hill. There's tables and chairs and things, and you can kind of sit and watch the trains. But it's a really neat spot. Always fun to go. Yeah. A little bit of Rock Island. I love that. Look at the sign for the Rail Grill.
Yeah, this stuff
I
is
wonder what kind
spectacular.
of food. I mean, that probably was amazing food.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Because engineers and railroad workers would be in there eating away.
I can just imagine like the hamburgers are a good breakfast. I mean,
Yeah,
eggs, bacon, all that's probably killer there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is all kind of early 70s. And what an odd thing here. How about an ABBB set of E units pulling a coal train?
Yeah, wow.
Anyway, and they're all XUP, of course.
And do they have pantographs on top of them there?
No, that's a shield for the air intakes
Oh,
up there on
okay.
the units, I guess, so they don't suck in water or other stuff, I believe is what those like
Yeah,
little table hood things are.
man.
But yeah, poor Rock, I guess, got a deal on as UP had excess E units after Amtrak and had to press them into coal train service, which is truly boy, there can't be a prototype for that. It's like, yeah, there is.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. Nice snowplow.
Isn't that cool? Now Bowser has announced that. I think that's coming out in the next year, or maybe a little overdue by now. That giant snowplow on the face of an old F9 that, of course, was Union Pacific. And I don't know the story on that C&O Jeep 9 in second place there. Might have been leased, lost, who knows. But it was obviously on the rock for whatever reason at the time.
And a lot of times too, this railpictures.net that you speak of, if you just type in the Rock Island 4155, you could get a whole flurry of pictures of that particular locomotive.
Oh, you certainly can. And in fact, I even subscribe. I forget what it is. It's a small amount to pay, and then there's no ads or anything on the Rail Picture site. And yeah, you can go in and basically say, "Show me nothing but F9s. Show me nothing but Rock Island." It's a really awesome site. This was recently announced by Athearn. They're going to do Genesis versions of these patched Rio Grande units that went to Rock Island. And as I remember, Rio Grande was either buying SD45s or Jeep 40 2s in the early 70s. And Rock was in bad enough shape that rather than trade them to EMD, Rock Island made an offer that we'll take your broken down used car rather than you trading it back to the dealer because we might be able to get around in it for a while. So, and here's another F9 from the UP without the big plow. And this is out in Flagler, Colorado, which is just about, maybe 45 minutes east of where we had lunch on our way back from our trip out to Wyoming not long ago. That old Flagler's one of those little towns on 70 between the Kansas border and Lyman.
Colorado actually goes quite a bit east once you get out of Denver, eh?
It really does. In fact, as a kid, I always associated Colorado with mountains, and I essentially thought the Front Range, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, Denver, like that was the state line. That I remember thinking like Lyman was in Kansas, and it's like, oh no, yeah, Colorado goes way out into the flatlands for quite a ways.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the smoke and I'm thinking, yeah, just wait 40 years, boys. That won't be acceptable.
And then you always feel bad for Rock Island because you see these things all the time because they were in the Chicago area near EMD's plant at LaGrange. So they have no money. They got broken down equipment, but you see like brand new Rio Grande tunnel motors. Here's brand new Southern Pacific Jeep 40 2s. Like, hey, can you deliver these for us? And it's like, yeah, we never get a new car, but we get to take them to the neighbors all the time. Like, hey, here's your new Cadillac. Let me get my,
Yeah.
AMC Matador out of your driveway.
And I don't think I'd be trusting the guy that has that in his driveway, that Rock Island unit in his driveway. I don't think I'd be trusting him to be delivering my new car either.
New car, exactly. Yeah, that poor old U28B is looking pretty sad.
Where exactly did the Rock Island run from and to?
I mean, they were across 14 states at one time. Chicago all the way out to Denver, all the way down to Houston, all the way up to Minneapolis, with also a leg out of Kansas City into St. Louis. And by their demise, they were down to trying to save their Twin Star rocket line, which have been the Twin Cities down to the Gulf. And they were looking at it as a hope for being like a north-south deliverer of grain to the Gulf. But I mean, they had quite a
Yeah.
the worst thing about the Rock Islands, they were the worst gambler in railroading. Like if you know the Burlington is everywhere west, I've heard the joke was Rock Island was everywhere worst. That they always would pick, and a lot of it made sense. Like they went to St. Joe instead of Kansas City, but St. Joe looked like it was going to be the big riverport town when they were building. They went to Colorado Springs instead of Denver, but Colorado Springs connected with the Colorado Midland. That was the only standard gauge line at the time building west. So again, on paper, it's like, well, no, that's a place to be because that'll probably end up being the real line. But yeah, they always ended up with, well, we go to all the second rate,
Yeah.
traffic towns. But
Do we have any idea how the Rock Island got its name? What it refers to? Because there's not a whole lot of islands in the Midwest.
it's a town in Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific. It's
Really?
and the Quad Cities of what is it, Davenport? They're in Iowa, Illinois. The Quad Cities area,
Oh yeah,
Rock Island is one of those. So just as Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, the Santa Fe got pulled out of that name, Rock Island comes out of Rock's
yeah.
name.
Okay. Well, and the thing it is, there's so many people listening to us that wouldn't know that. There wouldn't, it's Rock Island, and you know the Rock Island as the railroad name, but you wouldn't realize that anything that had that much of an impact on railroading in that era, is well known name, is just one little town out near Davenport, Iowa.
And not that important to the system. I mean, again, it's not it's like the Santa Fe. Santa Fe, New Mexico is actually not on the main. In fact, the Santa Fe goes down to Albuquerque and Belen, New Mexico, and then west. But Santa Fe was off. I'm trying to remember now, what is the town? Like if you're on Amtrak and you want to stop at Santa Fe, I think it's Lamy, Lamy, New Mexico is the stop, and you have to be bused to Santa Fe. So truly, it wasn't even on Santa Fe's main lines after a while, and yet that was the name that stuck. So you never know.
Wow.
I always like this scheme. I said how Rock Island never got power, but they did. In fact, here's a new U-33B that would have been bought around 1970 in blue.
I wonder why railroads continually change their scheme, because that, you're right, that was a neat scheme. And what would be in the board meeting when they're all sitting around going, no, let's change to red. No,
Yeah.
let's change to blue. Like that blue and white one scheme was particularly ugly, I thought.
Oh, it was. And I've heard the story on it that Rock Island's president in the mid 70s said, I see so much red in our meetings, because the railroad was going into bankruptcy, that he was tired of seeing red on the locomotives. So they changed to blue. But then the blue, of course, has the moniker of being bankruptcy blue, is what rail fans call it. So, yeah. And speaking of bankruptcy, we'll do a little bit of Penn Central here. I always like seeing the signs and things for facilities, because these are things like a lot of us, when you're out rail fanning,
Yep.
a lot of us didn't snap pictures of some of this stuff. So when I run across them, especially model wise, because on a model layout, you always like to put stuff like this up to identify
Yeah.
yards and such. So that's a cool Penn Central sign.
Sure.
Old Penn Central FA2 with the red and white worms in love logo, as I remember being told as a kid that's what that was, which is maybe too much information
Yeah.
for a youngster, but I
Yeah.
remember hearing that. And I think and there's some with a red C and a white P, and they represented the New York Central and the Pennsylvania. Like there was the red team, and I guess the P was probably, the red P would have been Pensy, and the red C maybe New York Central, is kind of the combative way the two roads never really worked too well in harmony. And then somehow there were units painted with a couple of late, I think some of this had actually been Pensy power that would have come, a U-28C and a U-33C, I believe, is a second unit. GEs of the late 60s, early 70s.
That was an ugly scheme, just all black like that, black with white lettering.
Well, it isn't. It was so ununiformly applied. Like, look at these are two New York Central Jeep 20s. Yet look at the PC Herald on the long hood. It's
Yeah.
giant. It's giant on the first one, dinky on the second one. Then the Penn Central's also set a little differently on the nose.
Considerably differently, yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those. Every time you see them, I don't know. Maybe they didn't.
It almost seems like they didn't care.
Yeah. Seems. How
Oh,
about that? You
sweet.
gotta love that. Yeah.
The Ford Pinto.
Oh no.
Yeah. Is that what it is? That's not. Is that a Lincoln?
Well, thank goodness there never was a Lincoln Pinto.
What
Or
is that? A Mercury?
in fact, the fact that you said a Lincoln Pinto, I may have trouble sleeping tonight.
Well,
That kind of bothers me.
is that a Mercury?
That is the Mercury Bobcat,
Oh, of course.
which is the Pinto clone given kind of a Lincoln-y face on
Yeah,
it,
yeah. Given a Lincoln-y face.
which there's so much wrong with that.
Yes, there's a lot wrong with that. There was
There's
a
a
lot.
lot wrong with that.
There was a lot wrong with the Pinto. Period.
But good. And then for you, I dug out some RS1s. This is over in Kansas City, and look at the old Santa Fe. I think this is a transfer over to Argentine from the Gulfmobile in Ohio.
Wow.
And that's an old, probably just in storage and would have been a water tender by that point. But 3763 is like an old Santa Fe Northern, I think, number. And this is a GM&O RS1 in its original, or close to original, tricolor scheme of the maroon with red and outline stripes in imitation gold, as they called it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as they simplified the scheme, GM&O went to solid maroon if they painted them up in Bloomington, Illinois. But then they also painted a little down in the south, like at Jackson at the Island shops in Tennessee, and the south painted them red. And so there's a red RS1 repaint. And then, of course, the road becomes Illinois Central Gulf. So there's a maroon repaint, a red repaint, and then an ICG repaint. It's kind of amazing that ICG bothered to expect they would keep those running, because by the early 70s, they were getting a bit long in the tooth.
Well,
But
exactly. They weren't particularly powerful locomotives. I think
no,
it was
yeah.
either 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower, or even less than that. I think.
So it is odd. In fact, they had even just bought a couple off the Illinois terminal and dropped a E7 prime mover in the long hood from old GM&O E units down in Paducah, Kentucky at the IC shops. So I guess they felt they were going to continue to need switchers for a while, but I think almost all these were gone by the mid 70s.
Beautiful.
We'll move on to some late era Santa Fe or Santa Fe non-traditional. When you think of Santa Fe passenger, it's always F units, but they did have a few E units, and those traditionally ran some of the trains like Texas, Oklahoma, and then naturally the connection train out of La Junta, Colorado in the southeast part of the state up to Denver, which I think might be this train, although I think it's curious that boxcar is FCP for, what is it, Federale something Pacifico, the Mexican road.
Yeah,
So it makes me wonder, maybe this is down in Texas, is where.
last one.
And this should be the combined El Capitan Chief coming down off Raton Pass with one of the U-28 CG, an FP-45, and then two F-45s. And then the El Cap cars are the high levels, and then the Chief are the low-level cars behind it. That's a beautiful ride. Have you ever been over Raton Pass
I
on
have
the train?
not. No, I have not. I've been all through Colorado. I've been from Denver to Salt Lake City and across Kansas, but I've never done that ride. That's a ride we need to do. That's a
That is,
what do
yeah.
we do? Do we first get the Mark LT and go to Durango, or do we ride a train together? I'm thinking riding a train.
Well, the train would be awful cool too. And they're always threatening that the Chief's going to go away. But I think that's gotten stabilized now. Then here's another FP45 with the F45 in Santa Fe. I guess they didn't buy that many of the FP45s, so some of the F45s had the hoses or the pass through for the steam generator cables, even though they were freight units. And then there's a B unit, and then what looks like a bicentennial baggage car is that one train that operated with the Frisco bicentennial caboose. And I'm not sure why it's on this Amtrak train. I don't know the exact date or year, but there was a bicentennial-ish show train, as I recall, that was of all things a Santa Fe Frisco deal, and that's what I think that baggage car is from. Although this is the U30CG, which I think is such an awesome unit. That's when after EMD did the cowled SD45s for the railroads, GE did this with their U30C, putting a fluted body on it, and I think that's an awesome looking unit.
No, I don't. I was never a big fan of the last one, the FP45s. I was never a big fan of.
Really?
Like this
Yeah.
works somehow. This works. The F units work. The F7s and all that works. But when in the new modern stuff where it's all where they take out all the Art Deco part and the bumps and they forget that a good locomotive is like a good baseball park with a lot of nooks and crannies.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't
It's
thought of that.
it's a cool
This,
cool
this is
shot.
Atchison, Kansas, and this is where Bandit and I go to have McDonald's and watch trains quite a bit. This is about half hour, 45 minutes due west of me, and the Santa Fe is coming off a bridge that it's still there, but it doesn't connect to anything over on the Missouri side. You're actually standing in Kansas looking over at Missouri. Above the Mopac is the automobile highway that comes down into Atchison, and that would be the Mopac train coming up from Kansas City. And that I'm not sure on the Santa Fe train. I don't know if this is a special movement or what, but this would have been coming into Atchison, Kansas, and I think the year is 1958. So certainly not what we usually see is me and the dog are sitting there eating hamburgers. It's
No,
Pueblo, Colorado. Here's a CNEI SD40. This is down the southern part of Colorado on the joint line, which
wow,
about Mopac basically almost underwater. I forget now where that is too. But what a neat shot is that, isn't it?
yeah,
Look at the high rail truck in the muddy, murky water.
That must,
And this is cool.
yeah, that is cool.
Those were Jenks Blue delivery vans. And then neat it says San Antonio in the picture, but you see the famous Pearl Brewer of San Antonio. And
Yeah.
we'll
Whoa, cool.
end with this cool little shot of, if you saw that like at a module at a train show, you go, how ridiculous is that? Why
Yeah,
would there be a gondola with noses from Jeeps or SDs in it? And it's like, well, there you go. There's 3 noses in the back of a radiator section tossed in a gondola.
that's a great load. That is a
Isn't that
cool.
cool? I mean, that'd be an awesome thing to do with some old junk shells.
I wonder what railroad that's from too.
I'm not sure. That's a Amtrak SDP 40 and a Santa Fe SD 45,
Yeah,
but
man, some of this stuff from the '70s is just the coolest stuff to weather and all that stuff.
very cool.
Okay, we're back there. Okay, you stopped sharing. See, now we're back on. See, I wore a hat tonight because the other night my hair wasn't so good.
You didn't think your hair was up to snuff? See, and
No.
I did my hair special for tonight.
If this works out, it's going to be pretty cool. And then I'll have to move my screens and everything, and people, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
my god. See, the problem is, this is my laptop over here, but I have a
Right.
big screen over here. This is what I stare at when I'm working, and this is how I make. This is where I record the podcast, but we have the cameras off, so nobody can see that I'm not looking at them.
Well,
Uh,
you can get one of those little cameras too,
I
to
could,
plug in. Yeah, so you could have it any place. Yeah.
yeah, I could. Okay, our email address. You want to try it, even though you're drinking coffee?
I've had my coffee, so I'm ready and raring to go. If you'd like to send an email to us, you can do so at modellerslife@gmail.com. And that's modelers with 1 L, like Penn Central, not 2, like Lehigh Valley. Well, that has 3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Valley.
see, I've fumbled it. There you go.
All right,
Well,
Cadillac. Cadillac.
there you go. All right.
No. Yeah,
Oh, we got our website.
yeah, we have a website, modellerslife.com, modellerslife.com. I got a feeling this will be on our free channel for a while. Just throw it up on YouTube and see who likes it. And that's it. We have a website. We have our email address. So this is it, Tony. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So remember, a modeler's life is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
35 millimeter slide shooters.